Well, welcome everyone to our Build a Better Book webinar. We're really glad that you're taking the time to join us this morning, or on a recording later, hopefully. We put this together to help those of you who might be interested in participating in our 3D Giving Day, which is an event that we began last year in 2019 in collaboration with 3Doodler, the maker of the 3D printing pen. And the idea was really to kind of bring together the National Day of Giving, which is at the beginning of December, along with the National 3D Printing Day into this 3D Giving Day, where we could have kids around the country creating tactile materials for children who are blind or visually impaired. So today we wanted to share with you a couple of stories from two of our partners in the network who did some really neat things last year in celebration of 3D Giving Day and who have some really great tips to share with you on how you can use 3D printing pens to make tactile materials. And we're also happy to have with us representatives from 3Doodler. So Evie Johnson is here, and Max may be joining us as well, Max Bogue. So we'll be sure to have them pop on here too so that you can ask any questions of 3Doodler if you have those. But for now, I just want to introduce our speakers. We have two speakers for you today. The first is going to be Phyllis Davis. She's a youth services manager at the Springfield Green Public Library in Missouri. She's at the Library Station branch. And she's been a partner of ours for the past couple of years and has done some really cool Build a Better Book programs at her library without any huge maker space. So I'm here to share with you that you don't need fancy equipment or a huge maker space to do some really effective Build a Better Book programming. And also Mindy Brodecki, who's an assistive technology specialist with Springfield Public Schools in Massachusetts. And Mindy is quite a 3D printing pen artist, and we are always amazed by the products that she's working on that she shares over Twitter. So if you're not following her on Twitter, but you're interested in 3D printing pens, I highly advise doing that because she has some really fantastic ideas and some great tips on how to use the pens. So I think Phyllis, you're gonna kick us off, and maybe Gigi can start sharing your slides.
Sounds great. All right, I'm going to get started. So I'm Phyllis Davis, and I am the Youth Services Manager at the Springfield Green County Library in Springfield, Missouri, the Library Station branch. And I'm going to start off by giving us all an example of how a public library with no makerspace and limited knowledge and experience can with accessibility can participate in Build a Better Book and 3D Giving Day. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about our community. We have close to 300,000 people, and we have 10 library branches. They include 5 urban branches in Springfield, Missouri, 5 rural county branches, and a bookmobile. And my friend Deb Russo, who is the Youth Services Manager at the Midtown Carnegie branch, and I attended the Build a Better Book training, which took place in February of 2019. So actually, we've only been participating for about 1.5 years. I mean, it seems like we've been doing this for a while, but it's really a short time that we've been together, and I am really excited about telling you about this project that we did. So we decided to do Build a Better Book workshops in the fall of 2019, so it would have been last year. And the reason we decided to wait was because I had an intern last summer. The Public Library Association had invited us, our branch, to participate in their public library inclusive internship initiative. And we had lots of stuff going on with that. So I wanted to wait until that was over. And the nice part about that is that our intern, who was a high school senior last fall, was really interested in Build a Better Book, and she became my partner in working with the teens and with teaching some of the different things that we did with the students, including a lot on the 3Doodlers. She really got into teaching others about how to use them. So I wanted to keep everything simple. We don't have a maker space. So I decided that we would start with what we learned at the training and see where it took us. And before COVID-19, our branch would hold a weekly teen night every Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. It was for teens in 6th through 12th grade, and they would meet and we would play board games and video games. We would eat snacks, and once or twice a month, we would have special themed activities. So we would host 15 to 25 kids every week, and they were pretty much a mix of kids who attended our local high school and local middle schools, and a group of students who were attending a private school in 6th through 12th grade, and it was a school that catered to students with autism. So it was kind of half and half with those students. So we already had some experience with inclusion with these students. And my branch is located on the north side of Springfield. It's a more diverse and more economically disadvantaged population than the rest of Springfield. So for example, the snacks that we would provide at our meetings were because a lot of our students would not necessarily have a lot to eat at home. So we would always make sure we fed them. So our first workshop we held during Teen Night in October, and it was an introduction to the project. The participation at these theme nights varies. So it's entirely voluntary. So I had no idea if any of the teens would be interested in participating. I thought I could be alone in the room. And I did end up with 5 teens and my intern. We played extraordinaires. We learned about tactile design, and we also practiced some brailing. And Gigi, if you want to show the first slide, or the second slide, the next one. So these are some pictures from our first night. I wanted to tell you the first person in the first picture is Leo. They are one of our best volunteers for Teen Night and also a participant. They actually really got engaged in Build a Better Book and ended up producing a set of tactile illustration cards to go with the fable, the Lion and the Mouse, which was one of the stories that was included in the curriculum of a preschool classroom that was a recipient of the projects for our 3D Giving Day. And the middle picture is our partner Naima, who was our intern for the summer. And like I said, she was really interested in brailing. She speaks 7 languages, so this was trying to learn another form of writing. And she was instrumental in teaching other teens how to use the 3 doodlers. And then the last picture is one of our teens from the School for Students with Autism, who was very enthusiastic in the project also. So by the time we got to last year's promotional information about 3D Giving Day, I was struggling for focus on what to do with the remaining workshops. One thing I knew was the teens that participated in that first one were really interested in the 3 doodlers. But we had 2 of them that we'd been given. We didn't know how we were going to accommodate what we anticipated was a huge interest. If we had more time, we would have applied for grants, but I was at the point where I thought, this is in December, that I was in the middle of October or the end of October, I think, when you sent it out. And immediately I said, we have to do this. And I thought of this classroom that I was already partnering with. It was Shining Stars Early Childhood Center, is a school in Springfield that teaches children ages 3 to 5 with special needs. And we had already been visiting classrooms monthly as a library. And they do have a classroom specifically for children who are blind or who have visual impairments. And so the first thing I did was I talked to the teacher of the classroom, and I talked to the social worker, and I asked if they might be interested in partnering for 3D Giving Day if we had created some books for the classroom or games or other projects, if they would like to be the recipients. And I thought it would be nice for us to actually create the projects during October and November so that we could actually go to the classroom on 3D Giving Day and have a little ceremony where we read the stories to the children, and we presented the materials. So that was my idea of how to organize things. So I had a client, I had a purpose, and I also had a problem. We only had those 2 3-doodlers. And I had been working for many years in underfunded libraries, and I've gotten very comfortable with asking for donations. All the businesses can say is no. So I went ahead and I contacted 3Doodler, and actually they got back to me very, very quickly. And I spoke to someone named Jake. He was wonderful. He explained to me that they couldn't give out donations to everyone who asked, and it is a small company, and I understand that, but he had a proposal for me. He wondered if I could work with them on a promotional project with local media, and if so, they might be able to provide us with some of the doodlers for promotional purposes that they use. So we talked about it, and we set up a partnership where they would send us some pens and some filaments, and the teens and I would adapt books, and we would donate them to the classroom that we were already partnering with. And then together for the next month, Jake and I and our community relations department worked together to garner attention from local media. So if you could move the slides forward. The second workshop was held in November, early November, and it was an introduction to the 3Doodlers and tactile design. I had printed out some copies of the free mini books that I found online that we could use for practicing tracing images. I trained Leo and Nema on how to use the pens and how to teach others to do so. And we had a turnout that night. I think we had 25 kids come to teen night, and 19 of them chose to participate in the night. So it was very successful. We had to have them work in waves because there were more people than we had pens. And I learned a lot that night. I learned that teens really like to use 3Doodler pens. They really like them. I learned that the size and the complexity of the images has a lot to do with choosing a book to adapt. We also learned that the pros and cons of different types of filaments. We don't have a 3D printer, so I had not had a lot of experience in different types of filament. And we learned which kind of filament works best with fun foam so that it sticks instead of melting it. So it was a real experiment. Nema, who our intern, she that night, in addition to teaching students to use the pens, she actually used black fun foam squares and brightly colored high contrast space related stickers and a 3Doodler to create a matching game that we could give to our client classroom. And that's how we learned about the tip about the filament and which one to use with fun foam. And it's definitely PLA. Do not use ABS or it will melt the fun foam. We looked at different books that I had on hand that could be adapted and donated. And then Nema, Leo, and I chose an extra large board book version of the book Polar Bear, What Do You Hear? It had large illustrations with strong, simple outlines of animals. It had illustrations that provided high contrast that could work with students with CVI. And then we talked about which teens who had attended the 2 workshops we would invite to participate. And we decided to invite 3 of them who seemed to really get the ideas that we were trying to teach. So we had one group meeting after that quickly, and then they came individually at various times after school and on weekends during November until we were finished with adapting the book. If you could forward the screen. Oh, here's a picture of Leo on the left. And Leo actually was so interested in creating their own design that they made these cards. And this is just a little picture of Leo using the 3Doodlers, where what they did was they took regular craft supplies to create the designs, but they also enhanced some pieces of the images with the three doodlers to create tactile raised parts, so that they could be it would be more effective. The touch would be more effective. And then on the left, or the right rather, is a picture of Nema creating her game that she created. The three projects, the books and the games and the cards, were delivered to the classroom on December 2019. And we ended up with two different local television spots that evening. And if you could forward the screen. So this is a picture of everything that we donated to the classroom. And if you could forward the screen again. And these are some of the images from the book. And I just wanted to mention that Nema, our intern, really worked hard on making sure the project was completed. She worked with individual students, and it was just wonderful. It was wonderful how they all worked together and tried to come up with ways to really enhance the images and really highlight some of the features of the different animals. And you can see in the pictures how that was done. So I'm going to show you some pictures of the 3D Giving Day. So if you could forward the picture for the screen. So this is the 3D Giving Day. This is when I'm reading to the students, and there's a group of 4 of them in the classroom touching the images together. It's a mixed classroom of students who are, 2 students who are completely blind, and then there are several students who have various visual impairments. And if you can forward the screen again. So what we did is we kind of took turns on the pictures, or on the, and we would allow some of the students a little more time to touch some of the images. And forward the screen one more time, because they needed a little more time. And then while they were doing that, the teacher would also discuss the images with the students. So it was a really successful program. We had already spent a lot of time working together, so they felt very comfortable with me in the classroom, and I felt like this was a great project. We had received a lot of information from the teacher, and we plan on participating with her again in the future when we get around to doing this. I just wanted to, if you can forward the screen one more time. I felt like this was December, and I felt like we were just getting started. I had been thinking about where I wanted to go next, and in February of 2020, I started a 4-week workshop with homeschooling families. The reason I did this is because I learned that for libraries, often we do single shot workshops or programs where we do something once. And for this particular project, it just doesn't work particularly well. It works better with Build a Better Book if you are able to have students come back more than once, to really learn and retain things, and also to have time to come up with ideas. So I had created this 4-week workshop, and this was the project that these students came up with. They decided they wanted to make these alphabet boards, and they used both craft items, and they also used 3 doodlers, and they did include Braille on their boards also. The last thing that I was planning to do was in April. Since we have had a lot of success with inviting groups and inclusion during our teen nights, we decided to partner with our local library, Talking Book and Braille Library, the Wolfner Library, our state library. And in April, we were going to have a partnership where we were going to have a gaming night, and we were going to invite students from Greene County and the surrounding counties who are high school students who are blind and have visual impairments to our regular teen night. And we were going to have adapted games and accessible games. And we were going to also do some squishy circuits. And it was a really great time we had planned. Unfortunately, we had to cancel it due to COVID. But after watching Neil and Eli's workshop last week, we had some great ideas. So we're probably going to do a Jeopardy game night, similar to what they presented last week. So that's another tip I have for you, is to watch all the webinars. They're wonderful and they'll give you great ideas. And I think right now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Mindy.
All right, let me just do a screen share. So I kind of did this backwards. Just gotta go to, there we go. Okay, so I got involved at Build a Better Book actually in January this year, but prior to that, I had started looking into building tactile materials for our students that are blind and vision impaired, as well as multiply handicapped. So I actually found Build a Better Book online and was following their website and their Twitter space and learning a lot when I got the opportunity to go in January. So 3D Giving Day was before that, and I had, actually I think I have my slides out of order, sorry, I'm going to apologize. So I come from a district that has 15 developmental skills programs. We have 60 schools in our district. There's 2 assistive technology specialists for the entire district. And we have our developmental classes are students that have multiple disabilities. So they have a lot of vision impairments with motor, cognitive, and sometimes hearing. So these are the kiddos that we have to do a lot of modification for. We also have well over 100 specialized life skills links, which are our autism programs, vocational and other programs, learning disabilities programs in our district that are substantially separate and considered to be what they call low incidence, or in other words, highly specialized classes. We have 60 preschools that are integrated and another, I think, 15 that are autism programs. And so we have a big population with a lot of needs, and we have a really large district that is substantially disadvantaged. It's 100% free and reduced lunch, actually 100% free lunch, and our resources are sometimes very limited. So looking at how can we adapt for kids, we do a lot of creating ourselves, and a lot of times it's like, you know, low-tech things like objects, paper things that you have exchanges. But I was really intrigued by the tactile piece of this. I had been to MassQ, which is Mass Educators Conference for Technology in Massachusetts, and they had a school from Newton that had done 3D printing, and they had made a book with animals, and it had Braille, and it was raised illustrations, and I was so fascinated by it. And, you know, we tried for 2 years to figure out how we could get a 3D printer. And then I went to another conference that was in Rhode Island, the Rhode Island Assistive Technology Conference, and they had somebody there that was doing a lot with tactile illustrations for kids that were blind. And I'm like, we really need to figure out how to do this. So I'm just going to go back, sorry, because I don't know why that's there. Sorry, let me just pull this down because it's going to bother me. All right. So, you know, it became an issue of how do we get the resources. And so I decided to try to do a donor's choose because a couple of my colleagues had done it and they've been fairly successful. So I wrote a donor's choose for a 3D printer. And when I was doing this, I didn't really know about 3D pens, but I ordered one because I thought it was something that went with the printer. And when we got it, happy surprise, it works by itself. And it's a lot easier to use than a 3D printer. So we started kind of playing with that as we were trying to get our 3D printer up and running. And we're, like I said, there's 2 of us for 60 schools. So we were like all over the place trying to have time to do the 3D printer. And the pen was just so much easier that we started creating books with that. And we were having a lot of good feedback and success. So a lot of times when I'm talking to people, I just got to get these in order. I am so sorry. we decided, anyways, as we were doing this, we decided we wanted to build a library to provide accessible books, because our district does have so many needs, and there's so many classrooms that we serve, and the teachers don't have time to necessarily adapt to the level that the kids need. So we thought if we built a library, then A, it wouldn't be sitting in somebody's closet. B, it would be a nice way to efficiently use materials that we're making. And C, the kids would really benefit from it. And hopefully it would inspire people to maybe do some more adaptations on their own if they saw what could be done. So we had to see, you know, about how we could service everybody. Because like I said, we have all those classrooms. Then we have our students that are homebound that are being served by tutors. And a lot of times they don't have any materials. So, you know, we figured it would be a really good way to share out that stuff. And so we got the, you know, like I said, we started with the 3D pens. Let me do this. And one of the things that we got asked a lot was, what is a 3D pen? So I kind of put a slide in here that talks about it. It's got a link to the 3Doodler page, because they were fantastic with the resources on their website to be able to share this information with people. So it's this little pen that has a piece of plastic that goes into it. It heats up kind of like a glue gun, and you can draw, and it can be flat as in like a 2D surface, or you can build up to make things 3D. So, you know, like I said, we were looking at how do we get them, and we started with the donors choose, and then we got one pen, and there's two of us, so we had to do something else. So we did help a teacher. So we got a second pen donated, and then we've done a few other donors chooses. I've entered a few contests online. I found if you leave Amazon feedback when you buy filament, that sometimes the companies will give you free filament. And so we did that. And so we've been using all of these resources that we can find to kind of gather resources so that we can continue to build our library. And so that's one of the things I've kind of learned to do, is be creative, because going to our district, we are not funded, as you know, most public schools are not funded for things like this, because we are not a classroom and we are AT. Our monies have to go towards buying things like, you know, devices, switches, software, and not so much towards the materials. So this has been a creative way of putting it together, and we've been able to pull together a number of resources to create a library, which is wonderful. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about how we're going to be building out more makers from this. But go back down, sorry. So one of the things that we found was, you know, this is a skill that you learn. And when we first got the pens, we were like, oh, these are a little hard. Like, how do you get the stuff to stick? And how do you build things up? And how do you do different colors? And how do you have good control? And there was a lot of things that we had to kind of play and do. When you get a pen, usually it comes with a plastic sheet, some filament, and some stencils. And it's a good place if you're going to be 3D penning to start to do tracing, and then learn to put those things together to make a more 3D model. My favorite resources I put on here, because I did a lot of searching online, because this was a completely new thing to me, starting with the 3D pen. I looked up the 3Doodler website, because there's a ton of videos, and I put the link to their hot tips page, because we found all sorts of great ideas for like ways to make things that we would have never thought of, and even ideas for like patterns, and just really a lot of really good resources there. And the other resource I found was Potent Printables, and they have videos for very beginners up to very sophisticated penners, and his videos are very even paced. They're easy to follow. Some of them get really techy. I'm never going to be that good. I mean, he makes it look like it's been printed with a 3D printer with no lines, and he uses sanding and wood burning equipment on the stuff. But it's been great for like learning about the different kinds of filament and learning about creative uses. He just did a piece on the translucent filament, actually doing penning on a mirrored surface and how it'll actually make it look like stained glass, which was pretty neat. So there was a lot of really good resources on those videos, and I wanted to share them with people because they were the ones that I found to be the most helpful as I got going, trying to figure out how to use these pens. So that kind of brings me to 3D Giving Day, which was December 3rd. We had been doing this for about 6 months, and I connected with Build a Better Book, you know, in following their website, and I saw the 3D Giving Day thing. So I wanted to participate and kind of build awareness of it as well. And so we tried to post as much as I could on Twitter of some of the things that I've made and to share it with people to get ideas. And so one of the picture here is of the Very Busy Spider kit that I did. I always include an original book for copyright purposes, and then I add sometimes just tactile drawings, sometimes we add objects, other times we add craft materials, and we try to make it as multi-sensory as possible. After going through the training in January, it's kind of funny because I look at the stuff I made now, back then, and I'm looking at it now going, okay, well, there's things like proportions that they talked about in our Build a Better Book training. Like you want to make the things that are smaller, smaller, and the things that are bigger, bigger. And you'll notice that I don't always do that. It's probably because of what I'm tracing off of. The books don't always have those models. So I'm trying to be more aware of that now and try to resize things so that at least the proportions are a little bit closer in size. But these were traced. What I tend to do is, you know, put different colors together, put a clear sheet of either I will use, I've tried wax paper. I'm not overly fond of that. I use sometimes, if I have the plastic sheets that come with the pens, I use those. And if I don't, I use a piece of laminating paper and just put it over it. And it's actually, it sticks really nicely. The filament sticks very nicely to it. And it allows me to have a clear surface that I can see under. So if I'm tracing, I can really, you know, see what I'm doing. And then what I started doing with a lot of my stuff was, I realized it kind of like was bumpy, but you didn't feel the characteristics of it. So I try to go back and I'd make the shapes now, and then I add in the features so that there's more of a tactile feel to those, so that it's a little bit more to discuss. What we did find was in making these kits is that our students really, really responded nicely to them. I loan my kits out. I take them into classrooms myself sometimes. I use them with individual students when I'm doing evaluations, but I also lend them out to the therapists, teachers, and tutors in our district to take and use with the students so that they have access to the materials. And the feedback I've gotten from people has been really nice. We have a developmental pre-K in the building that my office is based in, and the teacher actually came in and said to me, you've got to come down and see this. There's this little boy who's a very passive learner. He sits in his chair and I can't get him engaged to save my life. But she goes, I'll be showing it, the book that I made down there, and she goes, and he was reaching for things, which that's one of his goals, and he doesn't typically do. And the fact that he was reaching for things and actively interested in them and sustaining attention, that was really, really huge for him, because that is something that they work on with him continually, and it's something that's very difficult to do with him. So that was nice feedback. And then I had another therapist call me and say, I've got a video, the student that I'm working with, because this is another student that is very passive learner, doesn't show a lot of emotion, doesn't show a lot of engagement. And she said, when I started using the materials hand under hand with him and exploring them, she goes, he just lit up. And she goes, and this is the first time I've ever seen him smile. So like those kind of anecdotal responses to this has been really cool, because it's nice to see that the tactile component of this, you know, we try to make sure that we're pairing auditory, if there's any sight, some visual, but also the tactile component, because the more multisensory we're making it, the more responsive the students are. So this was the first book that we made, and this is actually the one that my friend came down and told me that she had the student reaching for the items. the tactile, it's funny because I look at this and I'm like, oh, we do things so different now. But when we first started, you know, the pens are a little stringy, and if you don't have the control, sometimes they're very thin, and the drawings can be very fragile. And so there was a lot of light left in behind these. The good thing about it was, you'll notice the dot in the center of them. We actually put Velcro on them so they Velcro to the page. We put visual supports in for the students that could see, that need those visual supports for language building. So the text is text, it's visual, and then we usually recommend that they play an auditory version of the book as well, or the teacher read it out loud. So we're pairing all the senses, and then they can explore the illustrations. The illustrations actually come out of the book and can be put on a light box. And because of the way that they're made, it can draw attention. So for a student like a cortical vision impairment or something like that, it actually can help them to focus on the color of the item if they have sight and those are their needs. So we try to, like, as we're building our books, we're trying to build for everybody. And so what we're asking our teams to do is, as we're sharing them out, we're like, if you have an add-on activity, if you do another, if you use these in a different way, if you notice that we're missing something, give us the feedback, and that way we can make these more robust and we can add to them, you know. So it may be that if we have a student that needs brailing, that our TVI would be willing to braille for us and we could put those in. Or if you have a student that needs more interactive things, then, you know, we can try to find a way to build more active, interactive ways of interacting with the print and the materials and things like that. So this is the brown bear. Let me go down. This one is rainbow fish, and this was a good example of that kind of building. So we started with a board book with a puppet in the middle of it, and we built the tactile illustrations. And we wanted to, like, you know, when the little blue fish asked rainbow fish for the scales, we wanted to have scales that they could actually pick up and take off. So we built a few little scales to go in there so they can have that interaction. We also made an under the sea, and you can't see it really well in the picture, but that's actually sitting on a play mat that has waves. So they could actually use it as a play mat to retell the story. And then when we went to Build a Better Book in January, we learned about Novel Effects, which is an app that adds sound effects to reading a story. So we put in our kit the link so that the teachers can download that and actually use it with their students, so that they've got that auditory piece paired with the tactile, the visual, and all that other stuff. And then we also had somebody make us an interactive sequencing set that we've now thrown in the bag. So it's nice because it's it's been a really nice collaboration tool and a really great way of getting people inspired on how can I make this a little more accessible, you know? So then we had My Pretty Princess Dress. This was made in mind for a particular student who has some sight, but doesn't have language, doesn't have physical motor skills. And we were looking at a way to do fun color matching. She's like one of the only girls in the class, you know, and so having something kind of fun for her. So we paired this after Build a Better Book with the Spectrum rings so that we record in. And now if you're wearing the ring, you can touch the dress and it says, I want the orange dress, or I want the blue dress. So again, adding some picture symbols, because she is a AAC communicator, to help her to recognize more symbols. We have the print, we have the tactile illustrations, and we're trying to build in as much as we can so that we can engage on all different levels. I did this one for a vocational classroom where we had a student that's low vision, that we were looking at ways to make them more aware of environmental print. So we did the shapes of the signs and all of the fill-in stuff I did freehand. And we have it so you can feel it. So you can actually feel the bike and the bike route words and the P with the line over it. We tried to do that in layers so you'd be able to feel it. And we added picture matching cards for our kids that are AAC users with that. This is one of my favorites, Miss Maple Seeds. When I saw this book, every now and then I get really obsessed with something, and this was one of the books I got obsessed with. I really wanted to make this. I made the tree, and then I thought, I really want to make Miss Maple be able to go on the bird and pass out the seeds with the little baskets. So I did that, and then we collected a specimen box with all the seeds and labeled them. And so the kids can, as they read the book, go through and feel each kind of seed and talk about the differences in them. And then I really, really love the flower that she's writing on the front cover. So I decided to build it. And so what I did with this was one of the websites had suggested using like tin foil and painter's tape, because the filament won't stick to the tin foil, but you can shape with tin foil and then cover it with painter's tape and it'll stick to the painter's tape. So I did a styrofoam ball. Actually, I did styrofoam ball. It wasn't tin foil, that one. It was styrofoam ball with a wooden dowel, wrapped it in painter's tape, and then painted over it to make the shape. Then I made individual little petals for hours one night, and then stuck them to the flower, and then built the little base around the bottom so that it could be the same as on the book. And I thought that would be a really cool way for the kids, and the kids have really loved it, to be able to take Miss Maple, put her in the flower, have her fly, feel the seeds. So it's kind of like making that book a little bit more interactive. And so, you know, like thinking as we're doing things, like a lot of things we made were 2D illustrations, they're tactile, but for the kids that need that kind of like playfulness and being able to have a different medium where they can move things around, manipulate them. I was looking at my son's got like collectible action figures, and you know, they have the base on the bottom of them and they don't really do much except for stand there. And I thought, we should try this. So we did the Cat in the Hat and thing 1 and thing 2 for the Cat in the Hat book. And we ended up adding him to a base. The thing I did learn is if you're doing that, you have to really build around the feet, because otherwise they fall over and break very easily. But our students have absolutely loved being able to move the Cat in the Hat and thing 1 and thing 2 around as they're telling the story. Goodnight Gorilla. Let me see if I can move this over a little bit. I wanted to make a cage that worked. And that was a little tricky because this is, like I said, I'm learning. So I drew a square, made like a cage, built 4 sides, and then filled in plastic vinyl in the back sheets. And then the door is held open with pipe cleaners, so you can open it and close it so that the animals can get out and follow the zookeeper. This book we did with a series of, and this is one of the ones I'm talking about, like with the sizing piece. You'll notice that the aardvark that I printed in the back is very big and all the animals are very small, and the zookeeper is giant in comparison. But you know, this is something I learned a few months after making this. So you know, I probably would do it a little bit differently, but the kids really enjoy it anyways, and they have a lot of fun. We kind of, you know, go through the different props, we talk about them, we talk about the characteristics, let them feel them. And then I added on in the back, you can barely see it, but we found a little animal stenciling activity. So we thought that would be cool for like an accessible art project, to be able to like put that down and secure it to a piece of paper and let a student either crayon rub or paint stamp around it to make an accessible art project to go with Goodnight Gorilla, because we are all about accessibility. Let me see. So I don't want to talk too much. The last thing I was going to show was my farmscape. I started this before I went to Build a Better Book, and it's something I worked on for a long time. I saw it online, and this is like really, I love this because it illustrates all the things you can do with a pen. If people think they need a 3D printer, a pen can do just as much, if not more. And so the playscape, I started with insufficient funds and insufficient green. So you'll notice that my green is a lot of different colors, because it was like every time I ordered, green came in a different shade. So, but I figured that makes it look very landscape normal. If you look from a plane, that's what it looks like, right? So I would come in like a half an hour early at least 3 or 4 times a week and work on a grid at a time. And the way that I flattened it was I used those little thimble, silicone thimble things, and I would put the paint, I put the filament in, and then while it was still hot, I'd press it down, so it gave it kind of a more pushed out look instead of being like a bunch of bumpy lines. I tried to, you know, give it different textures. And when it was done, we paired it with a couple of farm books and some animals. And so, of course, this got finished about a week before COVID closed us down. So this is sitting in my office, being eagerly awaiting to go out and be tried by our students, because you know, that's the goal of it, is that we can make this fun and engaging, and that they can have different opportunities to interact with these materials. So most of this was done with a 3D pen. The pond was, oh, what is it? The clay stuff, the foamy clay stuff, fun foam. And the back leaves on the tree were this, like, I don't even know what it's called. It's like a fake moss. So that was the only other textures I added in besides the 3D. Let's see. So, yep. And so, you know, again, I just kind of like had a few more illustrations. The cool thing I found was, though, is as I was doing this, it got other people interested. So that preschool teacher I was talking about, who came down so excited with what her students were doing, she went out and she bought a 3D pen. And so she started making books like this for her classroom. And this is one of the examples of a book that she made, which was the zoo book for unique learning. So she's adapting the unique learning books with the 3D pen. My coworker, Jamie, who I share an office with, she started playing with it and she made a few books. This was the Cloud book by Eric Carle. And then she made this, and this is like one of my absolute favorites. She made the little lady who swallowed a fly, and she took the head and made it with the 3D pen, mounted it onto one of those like plate holders. And we used a little piece of umbrella fabric from a dead umbrella and made the dress with that, glued it together. And then the little cards, she made the little cards so that as you read the story, you could feed them page by page into the little lady's mouth. And the kids absolutely love doing this. They love going through the book. They have so much fun with it. So it was just kind of a cool adaptation, and it's neat to see what other people do with it. So, and we've got a few other preschool teachers who have said to me that they were going to actually be looking into getting pens as well. So it's kind of like spreading out to staff. My goal this year was to spread it to students. After going to Build a Better Book and like helping students become empathetic, purposeful designers, I wrote a donor's choose and I got some 3D pens. And what happened was COVID. But I had one student that I had started with, because I was trying to figure out, like, how am I going to do this? I obviously need something that's kind of simple. How am I going to teach this? So I have this one student who is just a delight. She's a sweetheart, and she's always game to do something. So I said to her, if I bring over a pen and some filament and I show you how to use it, would you want to help me create books for some of our other students? And she's like, yes. So I brought the pen, brought the filament, brought the book and the laminating sheet. And she did a couple pieces with me. And then literally 2 days later, we went out with COVID. But her mom's actually called me and said she completed the book and she would like another one to do. So going back to school, she's going to be one of my first kids that I get out to do that with. But my goal is this year at some point to be able to work with some of our special ed vocational students who are our 18 to 22-year-old population, and have them start to create books as part of a community giving project, so that they can have one, it's going to give them some vocational and fine motor skills. Two, it's going to give them a sense of purpose and allow them to do something meaningful in their community, which would be good for work experience. So we've kind of identified some students that we're thinking about, and then it's just going to be, are we in person? Are we not in person? Because our district is waiting to know. So as we make those decisions, then we can kind of look at maybe how we're going to do that training. So I think that's pretty much mine. Any questions?
That was amazing, Mindy. You've done such a cool array of projects. It's so great to see how you've used the 3D pen in so many different ways. Yeah, we'd love to take questions. If anyone has any, you can feel free to unmute yourself um, or put a question in the chat. And I think along those, maybe while we wait for those questions, and Mindy, you just kind of alluded to this now with the impacts of COVID and how that might impact people who are trying to use maker equipment in their spaces. Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Sometimes I can see the little box around me, and a lot of times I can't, so I don't know if something's wrong with my sound. Just any thoughts from both of you around how your plans for using the 3D Doodle or other maker equipment might be different this year, or how you plan to kind of keep working with some of these tools in this time where it's more challenging to have kids sharing materials?
I have some ideas that I wanted to share. We had bought these bear books. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
This is Phyllis. Yeah. So we had bought some bear books that we had been planning to use with the homeschooling families. And I had spoken with the teachers in the classroom I was partnering with. And also I had another partner that I was working with from our local rehabilitation center for the blind and visually impaired. And she was actually a really good partner. So I would encourage people to reach out into the community for those specialists to get more information. It really helps the students to have access to them. So I was thinking about working with some of my partners in maybe doing a video with some tips on how to adapt some materials to create individual books for students and putting some kits together so that we would put a take and make kit together with one of those bear books and some craft materials, and possibly with some of the students that we know the families pretty well. We might also loan out the 3 doodlers, and we would actually get information about the students for this year. And we would invite the teens to create an individualized book where they would have maybe a little sketch of a teen or a student that they were designing for, and some ideas of their interests and likes, and some of their needs. And then we would have the students create the books at home and bring them back, and we would give them to the teachers. And that's what we kind of have in mind for this year for 3D Giving Day.
That's a great idea. We were talking about that too, because I'm not, we have a small number of pens, not enough to really share out with a lot of people, but doing some videos and kind of maybe targeting students that may have an interest in our vocational program in either early childhood or in some kind of art, so that we can maybe make it like a small internship. So that they're creating materials for us. We've, just trying to like think about pulling lessons together and doing some remote teaching on that as well. So it's going to be, I think, a work in progress as we're learning.
Have you guys thought about doing a pass it along program? We're working on a system at 3 Doodler. What we're doing is we're going to be providing pouches in the fall for people to put pens and materials into, and then that way you can pass the pen along the chain. So you could say have a book, each student does a page or 2 pages, and then they can pass it along to the next student in the chain. It also makes it a little more social as well, in that it's a group of students that are participating as they go along. And you can easily clean the pens and the equipment in between sessions, or if the parents can do it and then they can just pass it along, then it's less of a burden on the teachers and librarians.
That's a great idea. I love it.
Well, and Max, you weren't on when we first did intros, but I know we're kind of at the tail end and some people have already signed off, but do you want to do kind of a quick introduction of yourself and just
Oh, sure.
Three
Yeah, I was having
Doodlers'
one
involvement in
before.
this?
So I'm Maxwell Bogue. We're from 3Doodler, we're the inventors of 3D pens. We created the technology and have these wonderful pens. And so we partnered with Build a Better Book last year because we've seen a lot of response in the BVI community around this. In fact, so much so that the 3Doodler Start pens actually have tactile markings on them, so that you can orientate yourself and then draw if you're visually impaired or blind. We also have been working with the Andrew Helsinki Library and the New York Public City Library System. They specialize in this, and we're very excited about participating with Build a Better Book and all the different possibilities that this can generate, not just with books, but as others have mentioned, games and just turning anything into a tactile thing. I mean, even I've been working on a bunch of Gerald and Piggy books, as I particularly like how smooth and simple the lines are. And so the line art on the Gerald and Piggy stuff is particularly great when doing this. And then I've been cutting them up and putting them in the binders, because then that way you're not gonna damage the images, and it'll make it a little easier. As well as the fact that the text is quite easy, and you can do a lot of emotion with the Mo Williams text, because you know when someone's shouting. So by making the font big, all of a sudden you open up an even better way of understanding that something's being conveyed there. Yeah, I love 3D pens. If anyone has any questions about 3D pens, 3Doodler, I'm also happy to answer that. You can make anything.
Well, and I think it's also great to add too that the Start pen is a nice choice for using with kids because it is
Yes.
lower temperature, and so that is nice, a lot less risk of burning yourself with the tip or the filament.
Yeah, if you are doing it with younger kids, definitely the 3Doodler Start is it is a low enough temperature that you can draw directly onto your skin, whereas the 3Doodler Create Plus and the other pens, these are quite hot. These are 220 degrees Celsius, 400 and something Fahrenheit. These pens are around 35, 40 degrees Celsius. What is that? 100 and something, 110, 115 Fahrenheit. But that's one of the advantages, is that you can draw just directly onto your skin and you don't have to worry about that, as well as over things. And it does stick reasonably well to paper, but as I mentioned, masking tape or painter's tape are great things as well, as you can see. And this material is also home compostable and consumable. Not that you should, but if someone happens to put it in their mouth and swallow it, it's not the end of the world by any means. And we do also, I noticed that some of you guys are talking about, especially Mindy there, we also have learning bundles or learning packs where we sell them in 6 and 12s. And then it comes with enough of the consumables to last a curricular school year. That's assuming 2 45-minute lessons a week. And then those filament refills are available. So it can be a good way of getting that. And we are doing a Donors Choose promotion this fall, where we'll be supplementing a percentage of sales on those learning packs, learning bundles. And we are doing Learn from Home series stuff now, where it's coming with a lot of extra filament with like 200, 250 strands of filament extra to help people get started and have enough materials to do stuff with.
That's great to know about your Donors Choose kind of partnership, Max, because that would be great to share with our network, especially for prepping for this. That'd be great.
When I get the exact date from when we launch that, I'll be happy to share it with the whole network so that everyone can have it. So yeah.
That sounds really good. And we're also looking as a team about what we might be able to do to help provide kits or similar kind of pouches to partners that are interested in doing this year. Yeah, Phyllis.
I just wanted to mention too that 3Doodler has some great sales of filament. So, and I want to thank you personally for the donation that you guys made to our library. It has made a huge difference, and you've also earned a partner for life, because we will definitely be buying filament from you.
Thank you very much. I will say that we do a lot of sales and lots of stuff. There's always opportunities. Do be careful with filament in general. All of our filament actually happens to come from the United States. there can be some nasty things in filament, in the cheaper filament, and you can smell it oftentimes. So especially with kids, you just want to be careful. I mean, it may seem like a great deal to buy some really low cost filament, but there's a reason it's like low cost. So just a good thing to be aware of. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we've reached 11 o'clock, so we want to be aware of everybody's time. But thank you so much, Mindy and Phyllis, for sharing your experiences using 3Doodler and 3D pens and 3D Giving Day. We're really hoping that we can support a lot of partners across the network in participating in 3D Giving Day again this year. It might look a lot different from last year, we know that, but we're kind of excited about the potential because unlike a lot of the maker equipment that some of our partners use, the 3D pens are a lot more versatile and do have a lot of possibility in terms of being able to spread those out among some of our participants, even if they're not together physically in the same space. So we're excited to see what you all decide to do this year. So I think we're going to be doing 3D Giving Day generally is going to be again similar time of year this year in late November into mid-December. And I believe 3Doodler is also going to be doing a webinar around 3D Giving Day later this fall in October, I believe. So we'll certainly share that with members of our network too, so that if you guys want some additional ideas before the event, you can tune into that too. So, and thank you, Max and Evie, for joining us. Great to see you guys on here as well.